9 is 12 hours. The extra 2 hours, was that really 20% more productive? I will be shocked if it was 20% more productive. If you have 5 employees and you hire a 6th employee, that's 20% more productive. You're probably a little less creative if you're not doing anything else in your life. I have my best ideas when I'm like on a flight or like driving somewhere. Sometimes these like decisions or like these ideas are like actually worth 10x more than an extra few hours of work. I started as an entrepreneur, I loved it, but I just wanted to like survive. We got to $1 billion valuation in 2021. At that point, which is like, I would say I really got into the bonus levels on this game where I was like, I don't even know what my next goal is. I've tried to make it so like the pressure is kind of goes down as like success goes up, which is like, I think actually relatively rare. If you're more successful, why are you more stressed about it?
Immad Akhund has built one of the most loved fintechs of this generation. Mercury serves 300,000 customers and is at a $650 million annualized run rate. 1 in 3 US startups banks with them. The company has been profitable for 4 straight years. And as of last month, they have conditional approval to become Mercury Bank. But what's interesting is that Immad has accomplished all of this on his own terms. He's anti-996, he's still remote first at a time when Silicon Valley has bounced back to fully in person. He hires for traits most growth stage companies don't even look for. He said it's dangerous when everything has to be driven by metrics. And he said openly that he's optimized early on to be a founder for life and not for a sprint. Today, we talked to Immad about how he runs Mercury, the operating philosophy that got him here, and whether that philosophy holds up as Mercury becomes a bank, an AI-shaped company, and a business serving companies well beyond the tech ecosystem. Knuckle up. Immad, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So I want to start with something you've said that actually cuts through a lot of the culture theater in Silicon Valley. You've said that the culture is about the founder's personality, not about some values doc, not about some rituals, the founder's personality externalized. And I was wondering as I was preparing for this, that works for 10 people, 100 people company, maybe even stretch it to a 500 people company. But at the scale at which Mercury is today, 1,000 plus people, does it still work?
Oh yeah, 100%. I mean, I think I often talk to people who talk about culture, but I think they don't know what it means. And I think it's like an ill-defined word. And I'm an engineer, so I hate ill-defined words. So I really struggled with it for a long time. I was like, is it like having beers in the fridge and like going, that's what it was. Or is it like what programming language you choose, etc. So I think there are like probably some people mean culture and they mean something else. I think the easiest way to define culture that is very definitive and like means something and you can measure it and all that is like, what are the personalities of the people you hire? What are the personalities that you encourage? What are the types of traits you encourage kind of thing? You kind of have to decide that very early on because, what happened in my previous companies, I didn't really understand that. So, we had a bunch of salespeople that kind of ended up dominating the culture because they were the loudest voice in the room. And we didn't really have like a counterculture to like fix that. So it was fine, but it wasn't like the type of company I wanted to build with Mercury. So, we sat down when I think there was only 4 people and we're like, okay, what are the personalities that we really cared about? And, for us, it was kind of product-minded, humble, helpful people that were kind of curious. And, at that time, we were like, didn't like meetings. So we were like, no process, like, go build things kind of people. And so we wrote that down and we tried to measure against it. Like we had like interviews, like every engineer, everyone we did product interviews with. And we would, try to test people for like, okay, are they high ego? Are they? So there's a bunch of things that like followed from that. And there's, we have a bunch of things within the company that encourage that behavior, right? We pick one thing, like we have a channel called Grateful and people at the company, like every day there's multiple posts where people are like, oh, I'm really grateful to X and Y because they helped launch this project or whatever it is. A lot of that behavior is organic. I didn't make that channel. It just came across. So, but I think it's important. And I also think different personalities can work, right? Like I always think of Uber as an example of like a very competitive, high ego kind of culture, at least in the Travis days. Obviously, they built a very successful company doing that. Yeah, it doesn't work for my personality. I also think it like doesn't work for the product we're building. Like, maybe it could work, but I think Mercury is a very customer-centric kind of product where we're very transparent and open with our customers, and we try to be. That authenticity is part of the reason I think Mercury is successful. It does start with founder personalities, but then you kind of try to structure that, try to encourage that internally, then you hire against it, then it becomes like a self-perpetuating thing, and it also shows up in the product and like how you talk to customers.
Does it potentially lead to also, though, having a lot of the same personality in the company? Like, can a different personality come into the company?
Well, you need a little bit of like just different energy sometimes.
Yeah.
But it can sometimes ruin things. Like if sometimes you like let someone who is a bad fit come as a leader. I mean, I think it's especially an issue at exec level. I think at IC level, you can have a lot more variance, and I don't think it like spoils things too much. But at like a leadership level, if you have someone and then they hire people against them, and for whatever reason that clashes with the rest of the company, and then you can have a team that's in a silo, that it can lead to a lot of bad things. And we are very careful at the exec level, where we take a lot longer hiring and we try to test against that culture fit quite a bit. But it's not like you never have like 100% conformity, and like you don't necessarily want that either. You need enough of it that like you are really being true to that culture and not letting it deteriorate.
What about the other side of it, which is the founder also evolves in the journey? Like, Mercury has come such a long way. The Immad that started Mercury versus the Immad who is today. So has the culture evolved with your personality?
We end up like assessing it probably once a year and changing it once a year.
So it is a living doc.
It is a living doc. Change is like difficult to some extent because you don't want to be drastically, now we believe in something completely different and opposite. So what we tend to do is evaluate it from like, okay, the set of cultural things we have, are they serving us? Take that. Like we literally used to have one like no meetings. So I can't remember the exact phrasing, but like it just, sometimes the fastest way to get to a decision is a meeting.
Oh, was it no weekly meeting?
No, it was literally like, it was a very like anti-meetings like phrase. It was like, we don't like meetings. And it was fine. Like when there's 10 people and you're all in a room, it doesn't matter, right? But it wasn't serving us, and we got rid of that. So there's some that you remove, and then there's some that you're like, hey, we really want to encourage this behavior. You have to also try to shift culture by like creating something. So I think one of the more recent one was like, we were like focus on outcomes. And then we created a bunch of things too. Like we try to create a bunch of rituals around the culture as well. Okay, so it's like we focus on outcomes. So what are the outcomes we focus on? How do we drive that? How do we encourage it and like celebrate when people are doing the right thing? How do we put in the performance management process? So, if someone's going to get promotion, part of it is like, okay, maybe they did all the right things, but the outcomes didn't happen. And like, how do we measure all of that? So, it has to be something that shifts over time. I think to some extent my personality changes over time, but not that much. I mean, I guess I started Mercury 8 years ago when I was 33. There hasn't been like drastic changes in personality. I mean, I learn a lot, but the core stuff is still the core.
In Silicon Valley these days, there's a lot of talk about 996 constantly. It's gone towards fully about intense cultures. And you're on the other side. You've built a $650 million revenue business. Obviously, you have scaled in a way that very, very few people in history have scaled businesses. Can you talk about like what does the 996 culture get wrong? What's your thought about this?
From like day zero, we've had, we work hard, but it's normally 5 days a week. 9 to 6 or something like that. We don't have a religion around it. Like I have a family. Like I already had 2 kids before I started Mercury. Now I have 3. And I really see entrepreneurship as a long-term thing. Like I've done it for the last 20 years. I want to keep doing it for another 20 years. So I really want to do it in a way that it fits into my life. I used to be a 996 person, not because I was like, oh, I like 996. Like it was just like, I didn't have kids. I wasn't married. I woke up in the morning and I started work. I was more than 996. I woke up at 9 and then I just worked till midnight. Been like, maybe you go out for dinner, maybe you don't. And then, who cares if it's the weekend because like you're not doing anything. Like that's basically how I ran like the first few years of my startup life. I think to some extent it is, there's been a shift with AI where like being young is no longer like a problem in the sense that like, with B2B SaaS, if you were young and you don't have the experience to see like B2B problems, like it was hard to build a B2B SaaS company, which is the previous wave in the startup world. Now with AI, like, everything you've learned is probably wrong and you have to kind of reinvent it.
It's a liability problem.
It's maybe even a liability. And also there's just like a lot of people out there that just want to like play with the technology, that are young, that like, I started startups when I was 22. It's the best time to do a startup, right? You have no obligations. You just need enough money to like, survive with the least amount of kind of lifestyle cost. There's a big wave of like young people. So I think that's like part of the shift that like, yeah, they don't care. Yeah. And I found personally when I was young and I was, sitting on my computer all day, the reality is I wasn't like productive all day. Like I was on Twitter and like, I'm a pretty good programmer and that's what I used to do in my early startup days. But there's just only so much like really productive, like in the zone programming you can do per day. And the rest of the time you're kind of pretending sitting on a computer. So yeah, I think if you're like productive, like 9 to 6, and you're just like cranking away, I think you can be
But
just
your
as
point
productive.
is also that 996 is not good for like the marathon of
Yeah,
startups.
I don't think it's sustainable. I mean, I'm sure there's exceptions,
Yeah, yeah.
but like, is it fun? Like, I mean, is it fun not having a life? Like, it's like, that's reality. Like, I mean, I want to have fun. Like, it's like life's too short to like not have fun while we do things. Like, I have fun building startups. Like, it's not a prison for me,
Yeah.
right? It's not like, wow, I'm just gonna like, and like maybe it's fun for some people to just like. I know people that it is probably fun for them to do just that, and not only that, but like, I like having friends. I like spending time with my family.
If I steelman their argument a little bit, one could say, hey, the first few years of a startup, it's so existential. If you don't put everything into those first 3 years, especially, 996 is just a phrase, but like all in, all the time, then the longevity will not even matter. Versus like optimizing for, hey, I'm going to be an entrepreneur for 20 years, maybe even longer, which is what you've said. Would that argument hold? Would that be a fair critique of, hey, the first 3 years, man?
Yeah, I guess it's okay. I mean, here's my counter argument to it. I genuinely want to know, like, let's just take one day in this person's life. Like, 9 is 12 hours. Like, the extra 2 hours from like 10 hours to 12 hours, was that really 20% more productive? And I will be shocked if it was 20% more productive. It's, maybe 5% more productive. I think it's just the reality of it. You just can't be that much more productive. There's only so much productive time you can have in a day. Okay, so like maybe you're getting 5, I guess you're throwing a Saturday in there. So let's say you get 10% more productive. If you have 5 employees and you hire a 6th employee, that's 20% more productive, right? So like I'm not sure, like they're like working themselves to the bone. I think like you're probably a little like less creative if you're like not doing anything else in your life. Even when I'm like in the weekends and I'm not working, I'm thinking about Mercury, right? I'm like, it's processing. Like that's a lot of like I have my best ideas when I'm like on a flight or like driving somewhere. I'm like, oh, like, why don't we think about like you're grinding away, but actually like, sometimes these like decisions or like these ideas are like actually worth 10x more than an extra few hours of work, right? Like that's how like a different fork can change everything. So that would be my counter to it. But at the same time, I think it's fine. Like if people want to do it, I am like supportive. I think it's reasonable to say like if you're young, maybe that extra 10% is the difference, and you don't have the you don't have the money to go hire an extra person. I think there's lots of reasons why it's completely reasonable, and I'm not here like dictating what people should do. I don't think it's like just obvious that that's the only way to do it.
The other aspect where I think you guys are slightly different is you still are a remote first culture, and Silicon Valley dabbled with remote first. Actually, during COVID years, it was like, hey, talent is everywhere, opportunity is not. Let's get that talent. But it bounced back pretty aggressively towards everyone in person. What do you think of that dichotomy around remote first versus everyone in person? Because I do think you guys are somewhat different in 2026.
I think when you are small and pre-product market fit, I would still recommend being in person. And we were in person until we were about 30 people and COVID hit. So from like end of 2017 to 2020, we were in person. I think later on, there's a lot of advantages that come from being remote, and the actual in-person advantages kind of die down. Like we have 1,200 people, right? You can't even fit them in one floor. So like multiple floors, probably like most companies at scale, even that in person would have like separate offices, etc. The really big advantage I find is talent, right? Often I'm hiring an exec and I'm like, oh, wouldn't it be nice if this person was in San Francisco and I could like see them often? But like I find someone amazing in like New Jersey and I'm like, okay, am I going to get this amazing person? Like, is this amazing person going to like uproot their whole life to come to SF? Probably not, right? Like this is like, and it ends up being a differentiator, right? Like if there's other companies that will not hire that person because they're in New Jersey and they're not there, then I can. So like, I think the talent is definitely better and is definitely differentiated. I do think there's like some cultural it's not downside, but it just requires more work, right? Like we create at the minimum 3 opportunities for people to meet in person every year. So we have an all hands where we bring the whole company together and each team gets like 2. And then on the leadership team, there's probably 5 or 6 times we meet in person. And, we try to make those like very intense in-person moments. So, right, when you're in an office, like you can go days not talking to people or whatever. Whereas like when we get together, it's like you're doing social events together, you're working together, and like it creates that, it does, you do need that in-person touch point to create these kind of bonds and like create like connections and create ideas. So yeah, I think the other pro on in-person, remote is, I think it is a little cheaper, especially in San Francisco. Like the cost of living is really high. The expectations are very high. You're competing against every, whatever. And right now, Anthropic, OpenAI, whatever it is. So yeah, I think on the talent side, it's just a lot better. But it does require like a lot of deliberate effort.
Yeah, and collaboration. I want to go towards your philosophy on recruiting and teams, but let's go to the beginning. Like, how did you hire your first 10 to 20 people?
I think the super early stuff is like really hard to hire. Like I remember so we raised a round from Andreessen Horowitz. So we raised 6 million at a 23 million valuation, which
at that time it was just you, or
it was me and my 2 co-founders who I'd met at my previous company. Yeah, this is 2017. So that was like a unusually large and successful seed fund round, especially since we were super early. We hadn't run much code and there was no traction or anything. And then, I went to my like friends that worked at Facebook and Google and all this stuff. And there was nothing I could do to convince them to move. Because the problem is, if you work at these big companies, like if I was a seed stage startup now and I was trying to hire from Mercury, it would just be very hard because like Mercury's, the stock is worth like relatively liquid and worth a lot. And, they pay a lot of money. Whereas like, even if you raise like $5 million or whatever, it's very hard to like sell them. So I found the 2 main things we could do was like, go to people I knew. So actually 5 of the initial 8 people, which is what we mostly built the initial product with, worked with me at my previous company. And all of them still work at Mercury. And then the other thing is young, like talent, like, people who aren't proven, like it's just much easier to even go to Stanford or even like a smaller college or whatever. And you hire someone straight from college, like those people aren't necessarily getting a chance at these kind of mega companies. But there's some great talent there and you just have to be like really thoughtful about identifying it. There's also like another set of people are just like very into small companies, right? And like those people tend to be pretty good as well.
How much of your first year did you spend on recruiting?
The one thing I always tell entrepreneurs is like, if you want to recruit, the only way to do it is if you make it your number 1 priority, especially as a small company. Like no one else.
But is there any other way? When you say if you want to recruit, every founder has to recruit. Like it has to be that way, right?
I like phases when I'm early on. So we raised that 6 million. I recruited up to a team of 8 and then I stopped.
Okay.
And then we executed for a year and a half. I think we hired 1 other person then. But until we launched, we didn't hire anyone else.
So for those phases, it's the number 1 priority for you.
Yes. It doesn't mean you don't do anything else, but like, I find recruiting a little boring, to be honest. It's like, programming or like sales is like a little more fun, whereas recruiting is a bit of a grind for me, but it's necessary. And I'm always like, if I spend 1 moment of my time not recruiting, to go back to that previous thing where I said, like, if you go from 5 people to 6 people, you become 20% more productive. Like it's especially when you're a small team, it's very hard to beat the productivity you'll get from another good person. Why spend time doing something myself when I could hire that incremental person? Obviously, at some point you shouldn't hire, which like we could talk about when to stop. But yeah, you wake up in the morning, you're like, okay, recruiting is my number 1 priority. So what's there to do, right? Like job postings, trying to get referrals, emailing people that just like it's a grind. Like, you just got to wake up every morning and like, hitting up people on LinkedIn, whatever it is, you just have to do it.
But during that phase, when you say it's your number 1 priority, like how much approximately your time is spending? 50%, 30%?
Above 50%.
Above 50%.
Yeah, I mean, if you include interviews,
all the things,
and if you go multiple like roles, like it's very time consuming.
For the first 10, 20 people, were you looking for something specific in terms of 1 or 2 traits that really mattered? That might matter slightly less today, but those 20 hires, was there something like that?
I wouldn't say it's like the things that I don't look for now. And often people kind of glorify like those early people at startups a little bit. Like I actually think we get better people now than we did early because like people know Mercury and we can hire really amazing people. Whereas like it was hard hiring great people early on. Yeah, I mean, I think there's some attributes that are really essential when you're early, but I would say they're still essential now. Like, you want people that have like a really strong ownership mindset. I'm always like, hey, it's not like I'm not going to tell you what to do. You come here, you figure it out, and you get it done, kind of thing. So you want people that have that kind of ownership mindset. I still want those people. Like, I don't want people who are like waiting to be told what to do.
Yeah.
And then you want people that are very product minded, that really care. And again, we still want that.
Yeah.
I think one thing that does happen over time is you end up having more specialists, right? Like, if you want to hire someone in like AML investigations, right? That's like pretty specialist, and we go hire like people with like a lot of experience to do that. Early on, you want much more kind of generalists that can like slot into different things very easily.
Mercury famously has this curiosity interview. You give somebody an hour to present a non-work topic to their team or the team they would be joining. What are you testing there?
So I came up with this idea, and it's probably been like 12 years or something since I came up with it. But basically, I'm an engineer, and then I had to hire a sales team in my previous company. And I was like, these salespeople are just so good at talking. Like you come up with any freaking interview questions for salespeople, and you're like, how would you run a pipeline? And they have like these really beautiful like answers to these things. So, and with engineering, I was like, okay, you just give them a coding challenge. Like that's how you test if someone's good at engineering. So I was like, what is the coding challenge equivalent for sales? And then I came up with this answer that I was like, hey, present me a topic of your choice, spend like 45 minutes preparing a presentation, and like, let's just like you do it and we'll talk about it. And it was an amazing filter for salespeople, right? I'd have these conversations with them. They were amazing. I'd be like, oh, this is the best salesperson I've ever spoken to. And they'd come in on these presentation things and they could not talk about anything interesting. And like, if you ask them questions, they would like, they wouldn't have like thoughtful responses. And it turned out to be an amazing filter for salespeople. So since then, I basically I was like, okay, it works for salespeople. Why don't we do it for like basically every role? So we don't do it for engineers generally, like things that have like a coding challenge, or designers, like where you can really test like a work sample and like see what it's like. I think it's like less useful. And honestly, the times I've done it with engineers, they're just too good at it anyway, because engineers always have some quirky thing that they know way too well. But for most other levels and roles, we do it a lot for exec hiring. It's amazing filter for that as well.
But what are you getting there? Is it that this person is multidimensional, or that their standard interview topics they know how to how to ace?
So there's a bunch of elements, and we have like a whole grading score for it. So it's not that you just sit back and listen to them. It's like it's a much more conversational kind of thing. There is like a basic thing, like, are they interested in some interesting things? And like, have they gone deep on those subjects? And like, most good people who are like going to do a good job, and at least my experience with like people who are like great in their job, they have like weird things that they're like really interested in and like they know a lot about. Like that's like almost universal. I mean, obviously we bias towards Mercury, but like, you probably have like some weird thing that you know way too much about, right? I think it shows like you're curious, you're interested, you want to learn things. And like, it's the types of thing, like in a startup, you need people who are curious, they want to learn things, because like there's always going to be something new and there's always going to be something. So that is like a strong filter. There's also like, how do they react to like, we try to like intrigue them and push back. And like some people get like real defensive about it. Like, like we want to have a culture where it's like back and forth and we like challenge you on ideas and say like, and then, yeah, there's like this kind of general product. Like if you think about the abstract of like, what is product thinking? And like product thinking is this like being able to see a problem, come up with like answers and solutions to it. So we have like some classic questions that we do as like counters. So we'll be like, if you're really interested in, I don't know, pickleball, we'll be like, hey, let's say you're in charge of like making pickleball like really popular in America. Like, what would you do? And that's like, it's not quite like build a product, but it's kind of like product thinking, right? And like some people are just like, oh yeah, I'd go do this and that in schools. And, they have like 5 or 6 things that come up with quickly. Other people just like completely struggle and go blank on that kind of stuff. And I guess we want the people that are good at it. So we actually like literally look at it in terms of like every single cultural value we have. And like, how do we have like one question that tests against all of that? It's actually one of the best ways to tell ego as well. Like people who are like high ego, they cannot handle like pushback or like, any sort of challenge to an idea.
Yeah.
Whereas people humble are like much more like, oh yeah, that's really interesting. And they like enjoy that like kind of pushback.
Has there ever been an exception made in the sense that somebody who was acing their sales scores, whatever, like the interview, their past background, on the curiosity interview, they did okay? Maybe not bombed it. Because
not for sales. I would never make an exception for sales. This is
your core job.
It is. The presentation interview is 100% correlated with the sales job. We have made exceptions for some other things.
Yeah.
Like, I don't love making an exception ever, really, but yeah, there's sometimes like it's like a very specialist skill set, and this person's got a ton of background on it. And yeah, maybe they're not like a customer facing role, and they don't have to be like that product facing, and we've made exceptions. I don't love it. Like, I personally would never make an exception, but I know some people in the team to have.
How are you ensuring that as the company has grown to 1,200 people, that the recruiting bar is still high? Because the first, I don't know, till what time were you meeting almost every person?
Yeah, I think around 180, I met everyone.
Okay.
Uh, And then since then, you basically have to like take the things that you did and try to like productionize them. So, I mean, I don't want to keep talking about this presentation interview, but we set up a training course so like other people can conduct the interview, and we see how they do it, and we score them on like their ability to score the interview, and then we take the different things we're measuring, and we turn that into like a rubric that we judge in that interview process. So like across all the interviews, like, we try to hold a bar in that sense. And then there's also like performance managing on the other side, right? Like, I think no interview process is perfect. You're trying to make a judgment after like a few hours. So you just have to hold a bar on the other side as well and say, okay, they came in, how are they doing? And like,
Do you guys do a lot of back channel references? Is that a critical part of your process or not really?
Definitely for like leaders and execs and things like that. I don't Sometimes we end up doing it for like lower level things. I don't find them like super useful outside like execs, but yeah, I don't think it's like necessarily critical.
Have any of your beliefs on recruiting and team building, or even how teams are run, evolved as Mercury has scaled over the last? You've been an entrepreneur for a long time, but this is
Oh yeah, by far. My previous company was like 20 when we sold. One thing that was a complete game changer to me, which maybe it's obvious to everyone, but it definitely wasn't to me, is like after we raised the Series A, our Series A was like 20 million raised. Someone, Josh from Gusto, he said, hey, maybe you should get a recruiter, because I was asking him for like tips on like hiring now that we had like, I was like, oh, a recruiter. And, I'd kind of had experiences with like external contingency recruiters, which I basically never had a good experience with. So then we ended up hiring an internal recruiter, and that was completely game changing. Because we went from like me trying and like someone else in the team trying to like directly find people from my network, etc., to like someone who's just like dedicated 100% of their time to finding like the best talent. Complete game changer. Now we have a pretty big recruiting team of like, I think it's like 15-ish. Having a great recruiting team. And actually like one thing we ended up doing is, that first recruiter became our VP of recruiting, but she was really strong at like sussing out culture. So often, and maybe I shouldn't say this on camera, but like often people are kind of rude or dismissive of recruiters because, I guess they're used to not taking them seriously. But that's the first touch point at the company. And like if someone's rude or dismissive or whatever to the recruiter, that's a super bad sign. I guess in general, people tend to be very honest with recruiters and like who they really are, whereas they're sometimes pretending. So it actually ends up being like a really strong kind of cultural filter for us. But yeah, having an internal recruiter is a complete game changer. I often talk to people who are like, Series A, sometimes in Series B companies, and they haven't thought of this, and no one's told them this. Or like if you're working at all with like external contingency recruiters, like you can, and like you're hiring like two people a month or something like that, it's a no-brainer. Like you're going to save money, and it's going to be better hires.
It does seem to work better when the recruiter is treated even internally as a true partner by the VP of engineering, VP of sales, and often it can be.
There is literally no role at the company that works better if you don't treat them as a true internal partner. Like whether it's compliance or sales or recruiting or whatever. I think like one of the biggest mistakes people make at companies is not like, if you're going to have a role, you should make them like a core part of what makes you successful. Otherwise, you're like wasting an opportunity.
Let's walk through what does your week look like at today's scale, week as a CEO. So what's your Monday like, and how much time are you spending on product, sales, marketing today through the week?
Well, one thing I should plug is I got rid of one-on-ones. So I actually listened a year and a half or so ago to like Jensen Huang.
Yeah.
And he runs this company, super funny, but he's got like 60 direct reports, he said. But one of the things he said is he got rid of one-on-ones. And up until that point, I was running one-on-ones with everyone that reports to me and a few other people. And I was like, wow, I don't find those meetings like overly useful. And then I talked to a bunch of other CEOs, and they'd also got rid of one-on-ones, like not universally, but it was actually much more common than I thought. So if you have mostly leaders and execs reporting to you, I think you should probably get rid of one-on-ones. So that's something I'll go out there and say. But that's freed up a lot of my time, and I actually ended up then increasing the number of direct reports I had, because one-on-ones are just like, they take up a lot of time.
Yeah.
Like imagine if you have like 10 reports and you're doing weekly one-on-ones, that's like one day wiped out.
Yeah.
But they also take a lot of like headspace as well. So anyway, I replaced all one-on-ones with like group team meetings with execs. So I have a series of these. That we have a weekly all exec meeting. Then I have a bi-weekly, I think, GTM meeting, EPD execs, and then compliance and risk, legal, and then G&A. So exec meetings are like one set of things we do. And we try to get these into like not status updates. I can't stand status updates. It's all like, let's go into meaty like discussion topics around like, whatever is like the most important aspect of like that team. So that's a reasonable chunk of my meeting. On Fridays, we do what I call like exec workshop where it's like 3 hours long or something. It's kind of like an office hours where I will either go to a team and say like, hey, I want you to come in and like talk about what you're working on for 30 minutes, or a team will come to us and there's a channel, Slack channel for it, where they'll say, there's a new product launching, like we want to show you what we're working on, etc. And that all the execs are there, but it's often like a venue for me to see what's happening and opine on it, and for teams to get like decisions made at the exec level. And then a lot of the rest of it is like, I'm still recruiting, like especially if it's execs. There's a lot of like this morning. I mean, today I think I've done like 3 interviews so far. So recruiting is a big part of the rest of it.
How much of your attention is still on product and product innovation for Mercury?
Yeah, in that exact product workshop, there's a ton of it. And then we do a ton asynchronously. So I instituted this 2 channels. I can't remember how long ago, 2-3 years ago. But we call it the pre-shipped channel and the ship channel. And basically anything that's like often design ready, like initial designs, or sometimes it's just like in a spec mode, goes to the pre-ship channel. Everyone's part of it, but like it gives me like I can see what everyone's working on basically. And then the ship channel is like when it goes to production. So these channels are like super busy because like we're shipping things all the time. And that lets me like quickly see. And then, if I'm interested in something or have questions, I'll either tell them to come to the exec workshop or I'll just like reach out to them. That's my main like direct involvement with product. The other place where it often comes up is, if you're launching something big, like, I'll go test the product out and give feedback. And then the other big thing is, if there is new things we're working on, like I have a lot of ideas, so often, but not always, often the ideas for like a new product. And we've, in the last, I guess, 3-4 years, we've gone like very multi-product. So, we've got the core banking, but we also have credit cards and invoicing and bill pay. And we also just acquired a payroll company, and there's a couple of other things that we're working on. But, those ideas often come from me. And then, there's a kind of a process of like me pitching them and like seeing if an existing team can do it, or like instantiating a new team and then hiring against it, etc. That is like also like often top down.
But do you think of your week as, in different phases, I'm guessing similarly, like, hey, I'm attacking this massive problem that I need to solve, or it kind of is a steady marketing, product, sales, recruiting dial?
Definitely there's always like some big problem, and I end up devoting quite a lot of time to it. So at the start of this year, I kind of took over as a CTO. We're doing a CTO search, so if anyone good's out there, ping me. But as taking over for CTO, I ended up reorging the team a little bit and like going in there and saying like, okay, what are the big problems? What can I make like some quick wins with? And so that was very time consuming. I'd say it's still pretty time consuming. Like I'm very involved in the kind of engineering day-to-day stuff in a way that I wasn't before I kind of took over. But this ends up happening every year, that like there's some department where I take over because someone leaves, or they're not working out, or we need to do a change. So I end up learning about all sorts of things doing this. I think a big part of how I see my role, like there's the steady state stuff, but then there's like the chief kind of problem solver / chief opportunity finder kind of thing, and then you go like very deep on that.
Actually, one topic I'd love to get your take on is, how do you know an exec is no longer the right exec? So beyond the initial culture fit where somebody came in, didn't work out, put that aside, somebody was great for 2-3 years, but they might not be good for the next 2-3 years. What are the early signals somebody is plateaued for the next 2-3 years?
I'd say honestly, it's like becomes pretty obvious by the time you make that decision, and you're normally like, wow, I should have decided a while ago. Here's some factors. do they hire like a really strong bench underneath them? I find that the best execs, you look one layer below them and you're like, wow, these people could do your job, right? Like I think that not everyone, but like they normally have like two people that at least, or maybe three people that you're like, wow, these are like amazing leaders at the company. Obviously, you can't expect that day zero from an exec, but like an exec that's done a really good job is like both hired slash um, facilitated like really strong kind of talent just below them. Number two, like I think the higher up a company you go in the chain, like the less excuses you can have, right? Like me as a CEO, I have no excuse, right? Like if something's going wrong, it's my fault. But I think it's the same, like one level lower, to go back to the like, are you driving impact? Like I don't care what the form, like how good your reports are, like, you could do these amazing presentations. I don't care. It's like, okay, and generally every exec has like very strong, like things that they're aiming for, right? Like whether it's like launching products or like driving sales or whatever the metrics are that you would judge that exec on. And like, yeah, I don't think execs can have excuses. I think that's like the job is to deliver on that. So I'd say like those two, like talent and delivery, are like probably the two most important kind of measures where people start failing. And like talent is often one where you can see people not scaling, like they don't think ahead, they don't think what is needed. But same with outcomes, like they're not like necessarily like driving like what's a 10x outcome, right? Like it's the shape of almost every org needs to be different, 10x bigger.
But if you're not doing one-on-ones, is there a risk of not catching that plateauing of that exec early on enough?
I mean, I've never found one-on-ones help.
Yeah.
One-on-ones are just an avenue for them to like try to sell themselves. Like you need to create avenues where you have visibility into like what that team is doing, right? So like, I guess I didn't talk about this, but like most of our teams do like a quarterly review kind of thing where they, write like we do docs, we don't do any presidency. Write a doc about like what's your team doing, what are the deliveries, what are you going to do next time, like do some deep dives kind of stuff. So you get a sense from that. I mean, if it's like a core thing, like it's product or sales or whatever, you're seeing the metrics all the time, right?
Yeah.
Like, are we delivering? Are we behind on deadlines? Are we driving enough sales? Yeah, I find that it's my job to have that visibility. But, not doing one-on-ones does not mean like I'm not interacting with them all the time. Like whatever the role is, like there are tons of meetings that I'm part of where I'm seeing them perform. Whether it's exec meetings or whether it's the group meetings or whether it's like product meetings, like there's just so many places I see, like especially the people that report to me, I see them, all of them I'll see at least once a week, if not multiple times. So yeah, it's up to me to like understand what they're doing and see if they're delivering on it. Yeah, I've never found one-on-ones are like the way to do it anyway.
And then one of your operating principles is that I think the fastest or the most functional team is a 10-person team. So you guys have kind of recreated that with an 8-person product team, 1 PM, 1 designer, 6 engineers or something like that.
Yeah.
How many such teams actually exist at Mercury today?
Yeah, to some extent, maybe this is changing with AI, but like, this comes from my like startup roots, right? I've always thought like, wow, startups just seem like way more efficient than like a big company. And, if you look at it, like, Mercury has like 400 engineers. So like, in theory, we should be at least 40 times, we should produce 40 times more than like a seed stage startup. Obviously, we have to maintain a base and blah, blah, blah. So then you have to go like, what is it that makes these small teams like more efficient? I think there's small teams that have like, I call them autonomous product teams. They have to have like a overall remit where they can independently work, right? Like where you're like, hey, you own this thing. This is your KPI that you own. This is your product surface area. Go talk to customers, go figure out your roadmap. And, maybe there'll be some top down, but like that team is kind of driving it and owning it and like feeling the responsibility for it. I think that is like an ideal team. We have so many of these at this point. Let's see, 1, 2 times. Yeah, at least 15.
And are these truly autonomous teams? Now, where do they need your approval on product decisions?
My approval, very little. The bit where they're not autonomous is when they need to work with each other and like, to do big things. Like, we have one team that's like on our Mercury personal product, which is our personal banking product. But yeah, the reality is like sometimes they need to work with our risk disputes team or they need to work with our cards team. And then there's like some collaboration. And for some teams, they can really be independent. Like we have a invoicing team and they're like, they're fairly, but even then they have to work with the mobile team. But anyway, there are overlaps and that's where they can't be like fully autonomous, but they all have like a real ownership on like a end result that they're like driving at. And a lot of their roadmap is set internally. there's bits where, at the end of last year, we like did go and say like, hey, these are the big things we want to launch in 2026. And we set out like in November last year, we set out like a 6-item like product calendar for this year, which we're still kind of working on. So for those teams, we were really like a little more tops down, and we were like, okay, this is a big initiative. This is, what does it take to get this successful? And like what? But even then, it's like, somewhat the top down is like, we're going to launch this. Like we just launched an insights product, which is like, helps you give insights on your. But like how exactly it works, what are all the features, like is fairly up to the team to kind of.
Are they all reporting into a head of product or?
Yeah, so we have two VPs of product. One is like banking and risk, and the other is experiences. And they report to my co-founder, who's kind of like head of product and design.
You also said something around it's dangerous if companies' decisions are only made on metrics. And I think you, as an extension, I think you were talking about taste versus metrics. Correct me if I'm wrong on that. But how does that play out in your mind? Why did you say that? And then I would love to dive deeper into that once.
So I think there's some teams that are like very metrics driven and have to be. So like a lot of our growth teams, right? Like you're trying to drive like conversion from like sign up to application. And that's a complicated process because, we're a bank, but like there's so many steps in that you can optimize, and like mostly you should be driven by metrics when you're optimizing them. I think if that's all you do, you're going to end up with these kind of local maximas of like, oh yeah, we optimize that and we like increase conversion rate on that. And I see some companies do that. Like, I think to some extent, like Facebook the app, Facebook lost their heart because they become like so metrics driven that they never like actually thought about the customer. I do think the other set of things are like, it's just harder to measure metrics on like a lot of like improvements to like customer experience, right? Like, so we collect W-9s. So like if you want to pay a contractor, you're supposed to collect like tax information. And what are the metric we were optimizing for that? I mean, like customers like it. It makes a huge difference to like people's lives because like they'd have to collect these over email and like type them in. Like it's definitely better, but I just don't know what metric you would drive for that. I mean, obviously you want to launch that feature and people use it.
Yeah.
But like there's no overall like company level metric. It like drove, I mean, eventually it will drive retention and like maybe customers will tell each other about it and then there'll be more. It's not even about taste. I think like building an amazing product that like helps people, there's just not that much that's just like pure, like, let's crank the wheel on like optimizing metrics.
Yeah.
So that's my main point. At the end of the day, like, the company needs to drive EBITDA, right? Like that's super, like, we need to drive profit and like, that's the only metric that really matters. But like how you get there is like a kind of like,
Yeah, it kind of speaks to you, and Mercury are both very product-led. I mean, that Mercury is an extension of you. So you're saying product, it has to be product-led, not growth-led.
Yeah. It's like, how do we help customers? How do we solve their pains? Like a lot of that, I don't think is like a metric that you're driving.
But then again, as you've scaled to such a point, like how have you thought about your product taste and product intuition scaling with the company? Because now it's like Mercury started with a beloved product. Obviously, it was beloved. That's why it got product market fit. Now you're like so many products and you're expanding that portfolio.
I mean, firstly, it's not my product taste most of the time, right? Like I think if it comes to me and I'm the reason, like obviously sometimes it is mine. Sometimes I see things that like someone thought about at Mercury. And I'm like, wow, I didn't even think we could do that. Or like, that was a great idea. And like, we encourage a very close collaboration between like engineering, PM and design to like come up with like products and like, talk to customers. And like, there's no way that's going to come from me. Like, I'm not in the weeds on like a very, sometimes I am, but like most of the time, like the designer working on the product has thought about it way more than I have. So the main thing I do is like, when that slips up, right? Like I'm going to complain a lot. Not like in a, oh, this team sucks, but like I'll go and like, not always, but I try to go like pretty deep into like products we ship. Obviously I'm the use on Mercury, but I have my own fund on Mercury, my wife's business on Mercury. So I just test these things out and I'm like, okay, is this good or not? And then I give that feedback to the team. So in that sense, like, I think actually complaining is like a pretty good skill set for like you have to try to put yourself in a mindset of like, I don't know anything about Mercury, but what are all the things that just would bug me? If I like turned up at this product, I'd be like so annoyed that I have to like click this button or like this thing doesn't make any sense. Or like, I try to be like that, this kind of mindset of like I don't want to like think too much. I just want to have an amazing experience. And like, when it doesn't feel like that, I can like manifest that user. Have a lot of sympathy for like what that user would be like. That I think is like a important skill to have. But yeah, the product thinking and like delivering a great product, like you can't be doing that top down. Like the team has to be like driving that.
A similar question on scale. How do you ensure it remains a very performance driven organization at this scale? It's just the quarterly reviews or trusting the
I guess
lieutenants?
depends what you mean by performance driven. What do you mean by performance driven? Because there's a lot of elements to that, right? There's like, are you like driving, revenue, and like are you launching products and
I
things
guess
like
it's
that? It's like,
different for different teams. My question was more oriented towards, so obviously for some metric driven teams like growth, marketing, sales, it's much more metric driven. But on product, on design, customer support, like there's an intentionality and obsession with the outcome or impact, right?
yeah.
How are you ensuring that that's just percolating through the organization even as the company scales? Because this stasis sets in with scale over time or apathy.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think every team and concept at Mercury deserves its own kind of
Yeah.
thought on how you do it, right? Like if you think about, let's say, customer support, you can be pretty metrics driven there, right? Like you're like, okay, like what is the customer satisfaction? Like how many tickets are being processed? Like are we reducing our like mean time to get it to a ticket, right? Like with engineering, you also have like metrics, right? Like it's like per request per week, or like are you shipping on time to the calendar that you had set, kind of thing. Uh, so I think there's like the metrics side of it. I think second part of it is like culture, like do people love what they're doing? Like, are they enjoying, like when you're small again, like, people do things because they do things. It's not like there's like a external, like you have to perform, like, I think if people are liking what they're doing, they're liking the team, they understand why they're doing it and how they're helping customers. Like people want to ship things and
Yeah.
they want to do things. I think like at least the types of people we try to hire. And then, yeah, you do, no matter what, have to have like a bar where you're willing to like, fire people that are not performing. I think if you don't hold that over time, like A player team gets like a few B or C players, and then they're like, okay, these people aren't working, or I keep having to fill in for them, and that can like deteriorate the culture of the team. So you have to have like that bar, and you have to like continuously kind of be enforcing it.
Let's talk about how AI is changing how Mercury is run. First of all, actually, how much of your own cadence has changed with AI? Like, how deeply embedded is AI in your decision making or visibility into the organization?
I use it a lot just for kind of structuring my thoughts, thinking through problems, definitely like seeing what everyone's up to. And then I try to get like I wrote some code actually, did some Claude Code stuff. I mean I've done some personal projects, but yeah, I wrote some production code which I hadn't done since like 2021 actually, so that was kind of fun. But yeah, at the CEO level, it's not necessarily been as drastic as other places. I mean, I have like a little Claude coworker thing that helps me like prepare for meetings and things like that. But yeah, I wouldn't say it's been like complete game changer. Yeah, obviously engineering team, it's been a complete game changer, especially for new product development, right? Like I think existing, like maybe some of our core kind of banking core and payment stuff, it helps, but it's not been like 10x. But yeah, if you're doing something completely new greenfield, it's like amazing. We've done a bunch of stuff to like help encourage that. We have an AI enablement team that like is working on like tooling for the engineers, but also for the broader organization. So super useful there. And then on the rest of the teams, like everyone's like we encourage a lot of usage, and then so yeah, whether it's our finance team or our legal team, like our legal team's actually the biggest users of AI. Like we did a vote recently. It's like 80% of them say that it's like saved them like 20 hours a week or something like that. It's like it's been a insane.
Have you guys
use of-
adopted things like Decagon on customer support or some of these things?
Yeah, so on the customer support side, it's been really good. About 35% of our tickets are responded straight away. We're using Fin right now. Over time, we're probably going to bring it completely in-house. Just because like the next level of tickets, like if we want to get it to like 70%, like you kind of have to go integrate into internal systems.
Yeah.
And at that point, it might as well be internal. Yeah, super useful there. And then we're launching a bunch of kind of AI related features, right? We launched so one part of it is like, connecting into AI. So we have a Mercury MCP and a Mercury CLI. So if you're using Claude Code or Cowork or Codex or whatever it is, you can plug into Mercury and like have workflows that,
as a customer.
as a customer.
Oh wow.
The usage of that is going like crazy.
Yeah.
There's lots of interesting things people are doing with it. Like you can analyze your finances, or you can like see all the pending payment requests and like tie them into like some of the workflow. You can generate invoices. It's like all the things you can do in Mercury, and we keep like adding more and more of those features into it. So that's been big. The second thing is we are adding more kind of AI features directly into Mercury. So we launched this Mercury Insights thing where you can talk to your transactions, summarize them for you. Like, why did my AWS bill change in the last month or whatever it is? Like, there's lots of kind of questions you can ask around that data. And the more of Mercury you use, the better those answers can be, right? Like if you use us for credit card and banking and invoicing, you can ask a lot more. And then we're actually launching another thing later this year. It's called Mercury Command, where it'll basically let you do a bunch of the workflows that you can do within Mercury directly from AI. Instead of having to learn all the commands or like string together like different actions, you can just be like, hey, I need to pay my landlord $5,000 for the month, and it'll like, try to figure out what you mean and pop up something. Like every action still needs like a affirmative action. We don't let the AI do the action, but like we can basically like automate a ton of your workflows directly from Mercury.
Have you seen your sales and marketing orgs also embrace AI very aggressively or not yet?
Yes, but we went through this first phase, and I think it's probably got a lot better where we went and adopted some AI SDRs, and it kind of sucked. Like, and actually, I think it probably still sucks. At least the AI SDRs kind of flood the field.
Yeah.
So then the signal to noise ratio is like way off. So you have to be different in order to stand out. But what we have found is like enabling the salespeople with like the right thing to say is like a really powerful thing. It's like, who should I speak to? Someone just raised some money. It's like, as you're sending the email, it's like, oh yeah, congrats on the 1 million raise. Like, dot, 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 right? Or like they just hired the first finance person. Like that's a great point for like them, when they're considering new finance tools. So we find like, at least right now, and I think it'll change over time, is like AI and the sales team has been more useful as an enabler to internal people rather than like a replacement. But yeah, we're hiring like pretty aggressively on the sales side. So it's definitely not freed up any headcount.
Has your recruiting criteria across various business functions changed towards testing for AI fluency or nativeness, or not yet?
Definitely on the engineering side, I think it's like almost a given that you need to be like very fluent with it. And at this point, if you're not, like it'll be surprising. Yeah, I wouldn't say it's like changed too much outside the EPD function, the engineering product design. I guess data also has become like a much more AI field. So yeah, I'd say case by case on the other ones. So I don't know if like the finance person needs to.
And you touched on some of the product things that are coming out, but how has AI changed, taking a step back, Mercury's long-term vision?
I think the interesting thing about Mercury, and maybe this is true for other startups as well, like I feel like if you're on the right side of where history's going, then like almost everything helps you. At least that's what I've noticed with Mercury, which is, like for us, the right side is like banking is going to be disrupted by fintech, and technology companies are going to like really be the source of like that disruption. Some of the stuff is obvious, like banking is going to be online and digital, right? Like it's going to be mobile apps and websites rather than like bank branches. And like one of the original theses for Mercury was always like banking can do a lot more. It's not just the bank account; it's going to be the whole kind of financial suite. So yeah, everything that's happened, like when COVID happened, like that was a big boon for us because like bank branches were closed and you had to come. AI is another one where it's now the way you interact with banking and the tools you expect from banking and all the places you can use it in the back office is like completely shifted.
Yeah, I highly doubt Bank of America has an
Exactly.
MCP.
Like we are like we're like extremely well situated
Yeah.
for that because we're a technology company and that's just like what we do. Whereas like what would be a threat to anyone else is like a big boon for us because now it's like our differentiator is now even further, right? Like it was already great, but now if you want to be able to connect it to your MCP, there's just no one else that's going to do that for you. So yeah, that's my high level take on it. Yeah, I think it means that the things that we do have changed and like a lot of our focus has changed around it. But at the same time, it's mostly accelerated the overall vision, which is still like, how do we deliver great products to our customers? How do we speed up their life and make it easier? How do we give them great insights? Like all of these things were in my seats pitch, right? And this is how I always described Mercury. It's just like now we're going to do it with AI as part of that pitch.
You also recently got the approval to establish Mercury Bank.
Yeah.
But your interface has always been a banking interface.
Sure.
So does that change much for the customer? Or is this more about the backend operations and maybe some downstream products you can unleash because of that? But the banking interface remains, or the Mercury interface remains the same?
So the interface will be the same. It will enable a few extra features. So we'll have Zelle support, which isn't something we have right now. We'll have a lot more kind of lending products that like we can offer our customers, which to this day we have a couple, but we really minimize lending. So that's one thing. There'll be lots of like smaller changes that maybe people won't even notice, but like we will have quicker money movement. It's just like if you control every step of it, and like we're trying to like when we do the Mercury Bank integrations, we're like going directly to the Fed, and like because we control every step of it, give you the biggest cutoff windows, and like we could just guarantee a lot more, and like those things will, we care about those little things, even if like customers sometimes don't notice. Economically, it'll also be better for us. But I think overall, it's also like what makes sense for the long term for us, which is like right now, if you go to mercury.com, there's a lot of disclaimers on there because we can't call ourselves a bank and we have to make it very clear to our customers where they're actually banking. And that doesn't always engender the most trust from our customers. If you don't know about Mercury and you show up there, you're like, what is this? Like, I'm not getting a bank here. Like, it creates confusion. I genuinely think like if Mercury was a bank in a chartered sense, like, I don't know why someone would not use Mercury. At this point, I can say, okay, some people still have like some reservations about like using a fintech that has like this pass-through kind of bank relationship. But I think it'll go long way for trust. And trust has always been the biggest thing to get over with Mercury because like I think our product's always been the best. But like, do you trust this tiny startup? That's what we used to be. Now we're a big startup. But you have to, it's a big trust thing, right? Like a bank account is not like a low trust service. Like that's like something that's going to store all your money and you have to really trust it.
On that note, did the SVB crisis have a big impact on you guys? Because trust at that time was fleeing towards the big banks, right? And a lot of people were moving because who's too big to fail? Better to park your money there. Did that month or so?
It was actually net very beneficial to us. Like we gained 2 billion in deposits in that like 2-week period. And then after that point, like our graph went from like, it was like a step function change, but like, we every month after that, we were acquiring 80% more customers and it was like it grew at a higher gradient. And I think the reason that worked is we tried to say why we were different. Like we extended our FDIC insurance to kind of 5 million within that week. And we try to say like, okay, don't take my word for it. Like this is, your money is like in these kind of safe places. And I think that people really appreciated that. Obviously they were like our main competitors. So like they were still around, but like people stopped choosing them as their primary. So like they went to us. I think in general it made, there was definitely some people that their lesson was like, now we need to go to like a too big to fail bank. But then there was other sort of people like, hey, actually like, startups can like be much more transparent about where the money is and keep it safe. And like, it's not necessarily, SVB was supposed to be the too big to fail bank versus Mercury anyway. So I think it ended up being like a net confidence boost to us. But that was a big part of it, right? Like we had to like really deliver on like showing why we could be trusted in that moment.
Would being a bank challenge some of the cultural norms from being a product-led company to, I'm presuming, but correct me if I'm wrong, on more compliance requirements, more back office, buttoned up aspects of the organization?
So I think one of the reasons we're going to be, we applied for being a bank is the reality is at the scale we're at, we are not exempt from regulations. We're regulated via proxy. If we have a new product to launch, we have to go run it by our partner banks. And we have to run every like marketing update by compliance. And so all these things is already true. Actually, though, it's almost worse because like our programs, instead of being dictated by us, are dictated by third parties. So, I mean, that's the reality of any at-scale fintech, that you are regulated. So that's one thing. Number two, our aim, and like maybe this is like naive of me, but like naivety is the reason why we do anything, is there's just not that many fintechs at scale that become banks, right? Like maybe 2 or something. So I think there's a way to do it differently. And I think I would be disappointed if like we come back 5 years from now and, I did everything that a bank does exactly how a bank does. Yeah, we're not like innovating and we're not like product led and we're not customer centric and all of these things. Like the reason we exist is because, to some extent the banks failed at doing what we felt needed to be done. So yeah, I want to build a new type of institution. And that's the opportunity, right? Like the contrarian thing is like, how do we become a regulated bank while building like a product-led, high
Yeah.
velocity kind of company? And if we can achieve that, I think that's a huge like TAM opportunity, and that's like what's fun about it.
So the other part that is changing about Mercury is that you started with a startup as a customer, but
Yeah.
then last year 73% of your business came from outside of Silicon Valley or outside of the startup ecosystem. Is that leading to change in how you're thinking about product at all,
Oh yeah.
or you think it's a natural extension for you?
No, there's a bunch of changes. Some non-obvious ones, right? Like for a long time, all of our onboarding was like very startup centric. Like, I mean, a lot of it still is, but like we'll ask you like who's your VCs, and we'll ask for your LinkedIn and all this kind of stuff. It ended up being like we weren't always collecting the right information and being able to onboard like a normal SMB. So we did a bunch of changes actually. Like start of last year, we were like, okay, let's like, yeah, yes, it should work great for startups, but let's also collect the right information and get like other types of businesses onboarded quickly. Then we also ended up making changes to like our corporate credit card product, where previously, if you're a startup and you've raised $1 million, you get like a really nice credit limit. But if you're like a small business and you're like have 30K, you'll not get access to the card. So we made a new underwriting process where like even smaller cash balances will get a card. They just have to pay it back daily. So lots of these like little nuances. Like the product is horizontal, right? Like it's like every business can use a banking service, right? Like that bit's like exists, but like all the little bits that like make it perfect for startups don't always like work for another type of business. So especially a cash constrained business, which like most businesses out there are. So the bunch of product changes, and then there's a bunch of kind of go to market kind of changes. So like on the website for a long time it just said like banking for startups, right? Like so if you showed up and you're like even an e-commerce company, you might be like, okay, well, this isn't really for me. So yeah, how we talk about the product, where we market the product, the sales team, the partnership team, like a lot of these things, again, like it was more like addition thing. Like we still want to do all the things we do in the startup space, and our startup market share has still grown in the last year and a bit, but we also want to go nail these other spaces. And yeah, the other spaces are huge. Like our growth started accelerating. So last year we grew 50%. We're probably going to grow more than 50% this year. On like customer count, and that's just because like the startup space, like I mean it's big in terms of dollars, but it's like in terms of number of customers, it's not as big as like the small business or SMB space.
You've mentioned you want Mercury to keep flourishing beyond you.
Yeah.
What does Mercury need to become in the years to come or the decades ahead, which it is not today, for that dream to come true?
I mean, hopefully it's already at the phase where like if I disappeared, there's like good bones there, and like it would keep going. I think the thing that like a founding CEO can do is like more disruptive things, right? Like we're going into payroll. Like that's not an obvious thing for like a banking service to do, right? Like I think like this kind of reinvention where you're like willing to do new things and like push yourself. Like Mercury Personal, us expanding from business to personal, I had a lot of pushback internally, and I think most people now like it internally, but yeah, it was just not an obvious thing to do. And like I just was like, hey, we'll do a bet, like it's worth it, and like these are my reasons. But like organizations are like kind of probably for reasonable reasons, like don't like change and don't like new things as much as like founders. And like I love change. I live for change. Like change is the main thing I want in life. Yeah, I don't know what the answer is there. I think like obviously other people have done a CEO transition where they've been like installed CEOs that also like that change, that entrepreneurial, and like that would be my hope. But yeah, I'm only like 42. I'm losing count ever. So yeah, there's still a lot to do at Mercury. So I guess we should plan for it. But right now, I'm happy to run it.
So let's talk about the inner game. You've been a 3-time founder. How is Immad today different than when you were on your first or second startup in terms of psyche management, how you approach founder life?
That's a good question. I think the biggest thing that you get over time is like having confidence in yourself and your ideas. And, when you first do a startup, at least I was like very susceptible to other people's ideas. I was like, oh, maybe this is the way you do a startup. Maybe that's the way you do a startup. And like over time you get, you learn better ideas, but you also get confidence in your ideas, and you're like, maybe I'll talk to Jensen Huang and like go like, oh yeah, this is a good point. Like one-on-ones don't work, but like, there's a lot of other things he said where like you have to have your own opinions and apply them. And I think that's like getting confidence in your own opinions, knowing who you are, and like going like, oh, this is the types of people I want to work for. This is the types of products I want to build. That takes a long time. I'd say like by the time I started Mercury, I was 33, and I was probably in like a better place to have most of that stuff set. And yeah, there's every year I'm learning something new, but it doesn't tend to be like these core kind of dynamics of like who I am. And like who you are does like definitely influence on like what type of business you build. Psyche management, I think when you're, I know, like it goes back to some of that 996 conversation. It was definitely like, you know, I had to learn like what is like a steady state for me. Something that I relearn over time is like I can't spend too much time only doing things I don't enjoy. And there's some elements of being a CEO where you just have to like go recruit or like go solve a problem, and like it's not that much fun. Whereas like, I like engineering and product and like talking to customers, and like if I don't give myself enough space to do that, I can definitely feel burnt out. So like, a lot of the psyche management goes back to like burnout management. It's like, okay, what is a steady state for you to do this for a long time and have that energy that you bring into the company? And like, I definitely talk to like some people who actually a lot of founders get burnt out. Yeah, that's not healthy for for them or their startup. Actually, like I think having that like management of like your own state and knowing what like your needs are is important. Like there's a bunch of like elements to that. But yeah, I mean, the core of it is like sleep well, meditate, and exercise, and like, yeah, and like, I guess like have a good family life.
Are there founder CEOs that you talk to when you're stuck on an operating matter or a leadership matter that you go to repeatedly?
It tends to be, it depends on what the matter is. And like the tricky part of like running a company at scale is like you don't have that many peers that you can talk to. So, we've had some really useful investors at Mercury, like Zach from Plaid is an investor and Kazar from Applied is an investor. So that helps. And like often if I'm hiring a CFO, what should I look for? Like that kind of like question is really useful. And then there's a few communities that I'm involved with. So the one I joined like a year and a half ago, it's a YPO, but that's really useful. It's like a very high performance CEOs in this group. We get together like once a month, and like that's everyone's like very honest and authentic in that group. So that's a useful place for me to get like. Often, I find with advice is like it's mostly a good avenue for you to talk honestly about, so that like you kind of obviously there's like specific advice you get, but you also like self-discover advice when you like have an avenue for like talking about it.
Has there been an instance recently, and maybe the one-on-one Jensen thing, where another CEO has been able to change your opinion on some or how you run the company?
Yeah, there was like a recent kind of element where, we're applying for this bank charter, and I was trying to communicate to the compliance team around like, how do we want to do compliance in a kind of regulated world. And I was like getting kind of stuck into like very specific, like, oh, how do we do data governance, and like getting really in the weeds about it. And like, someone gave me this advice. I won't say who, but really useful advice to go like, hey, maybe like instead of being in the weeds and trying to solve like each problem one by one, maybe you need to like write something about like what is the culture of how we approach problems in compliance. So I wrote a doc on like, this is the culture of like compliance. And like, I went really deep into like, when should we think actively versus like when we should just copy what are the expectations from like other bank compliance things. Maybe it sounds simple, but like just like that advice and like writing like that culture doc led on to like a bunch of things that were like super useful and like really changed the way compliance worked at Mercury and like really helped. But those little things, like it was a blind spot for me. I wasn't like afterwards I was like, oh yeah, of course. Like I shouldn't be like going deep on every problem. I should be like trying to solve like the root of like the, what is the culture around like how we solve problems in compliance. But sometimes you just need like someone to like give you that like,
is there a part of being a CEO that has become harder with scale?
There's different levels where you just have to change the way you do things. One thing that bugs me is like I'm a very direct and honest person, and like sometimes people take you too seriously.
Every word that you say.
Yeah, exactly. Like, once I did this, like I went into like a Slack channel or something, and I was like, oh yeah, what's happening with this project? And I genuinely just wanted to know what's happening with the project. But the whole team was like freaking out in the back end, going like, oh my God, Immad's saying like this project's delayed, and like Immad's annoyed about it. And So now when I have to say things, I have to like really disclaim them. I have to say like, hey guys, I am not saying there's any problem, but I'm just like interested. And if there's an update, I haven't heard about it. Just like a reasonable number of disclaimers, which like I'm getting it better at, but like it's not my natural kind of mode of operation. So yeah, that's like a small thing that bugs me. There's definitely like 2 or 3 phases as a CEO, and you just have to operate differently. Like there's the initial phase, you're still an IC, right? Like less than 30 people, you're probably just getting stuff done as a CEO. And then you have to move to a phase where you're like mostly managing managers. And that's a different phase. Like that's, maybe from like 20, 30 people. And then eventually you get to this phase probably around 200 where you're mostly managing execs. And like those are like the two, most people would say that type of like size, and it varies a little bit. But those 3 jobs as a CEO are like 3 different jobs. Like they're not the same job at all. But like, there's none of them are inherently hard or inherently easy. But you have to like, I think the bit that other people sometimes struggle with, they're like, oh, they really like being an IC CEO. Whereas I've always been like, I want to build the biggest company CEO because like, I just think that's like fun. Like I want to have the biggest challenge and the biggest impact. So I'm willing to like really learn and try to be the best CEO of like all 3 of those phases. Maybe there's a 4th phase I haven't got there yet. And like, all the 10,000 employee CEOs are like, yeah, you're just a strategic resource allocator or something like that. Yeah. Or maybe like all companies will be small companies in the future. But yeah, it's definitely like a different job at those things. But I think like a big part of being a good CEO is like learning to do those jobs, but also enjoy the jobs and also construct them in a way that you can enjoy them. Because I don't know, I feel like if you don't enjoy what you do, you're not going to do a good job with it.
I also heard you say in a podcast, I think it was a recent podcast, where you talked about you're at the bonus levels as a founder now.
Yeah.
You've accomplished much more than what you set out to do. Can you talk about how the scarcity era Immad versus the bonus era Immad makes decisions differently, if at all, or plays the game differently?
For a long time, like I have a relatively poor background. Like my parents were on welfare and we moved to the UK with like very little. So for a long time, I was just like, I started as an entrepreneur. I loved it, but I didn't have like some grand ambition. Like I just wanted to like survive. Yeah, there was definitely a phase where it was just like survival and I was fine with like any exit. And like when we sold our last company for 45 million, I finally like, and that was like my first 10 years of entrepreneurship. So it was a long time. I finally got to a level where I was like, okay, I'm like happy. And then it was like a kind of existential thing. I was like, okay, what do I really want to do? And I considered, being an investor. And like, I eventually decided like, I really love doing a startup and I wanted to like go for something really big. So I do think the mentality shift allowed me to go for something much bigger that I was willing to, especially in 2017, like doing a neobank was like not a thing you did. And I was like, I started the company and I was like, maybe this will take 3 years before I like raise anything else or like get to product market fit. And I was really committed. I was like, I'm going to spend 3 years doing it if that's what's necessary kind of thing. There's no way you could take that kind of 3-year like big swing if you have like a much more scarcity mindset. So that was like definitely a mindset shift for me. I'm trying to think of like what else. I'd say like then for a long time I had this other goal in my head, which is like, build a unicorn, right? Like for, again, like early on in the startup thing, everyone's like, wow, like build a unicorn, get to like 100 million in revenue, etc. And like we got to $1 billion valuation in 2021. So there was definitely at that point, which is like, I would say I really got into the bonus levels on this game where I was like, I don't even know what my next goal is. Yeah, at least in terms of like the money side of things. At that point, I would say I shifted a little bit to thinking like, okay, how do I just build like something that customers really love that can be like as big as possible and like really just disrupt banking. And so it's like a little bit more vague as a goal, right? Like like getting like the first exit or like the first unicorn valuation, etc. was like a more definitive thing. Now it's like more open ended. But yeah, I think to end up like each of those phases, you end up having like more long-term kind of goals and like in some ways more long-term prep. I think this helps a little bit with like kind of your previous question around like stress management. Like I think if you are always grateful for what you've achieved and you do think about it as like, oh, this is the bonus level, like, otherwise you can be like in some ways there's just so much more to think about today and there's more to stress about. I've tried to make it so like the pressure is kind of goes down as like success goes up, which is like I think actually relatively rare.
I think it's very rare. Yeah.
But like it should be like that, right? Like if you're more successful, why are you more stressed about it?
Yeah. Is there something you're still trying to prove to yourself though?
I mean, there's always like, there's always someone. Yeah, there's like Elon Musk is out there, right? Like it's like he's running like $5 billion+ companies, right? There's always something like if you're like somewhat competitive and like there's always, but like I'm not. I think there's like unhealthy, like I am not successful until like I've squished everyone or something. So there's unhealthy competition, and I think I'm like relatively healthy about it. That like there's people out there that are I think have done like amazing things, and like maybe I can try to achieve some part of that. But it's not something that I like stress about that I need to like beat other people or something.
Well, next is up our quickfire round.
Let's go.
Okay, most underrated trait in builders.
Honestly, I don't know if it's underrated, but I think the two you need is like optimism, curiosity, and perseverance. So, but I guess from the three, probably optimism is the most underrated. Like you really need to be so optimistic to build something.
Most overrated trait in builders.
I think this like idea that you have to be contrarian. I don't know. I mean, I think you have to be opinionated, but I don't think all your opinions need to be like completely different from everyone else. Like I feel like it's a bit oversold.
The trait Mercury selects foreign candidates better than most companies.
Yeah, probably curiosity is the one that we focus on. And then also probably being humble. I think those two things other people don't always pick for.
A product decision where your team was right and you were wrong.
That's a fun one. We actually changed this one's just the most recent, so I remember it. Is like a lot of people show up to Mercury on mobile. But it's quite a complicated application process to sign up for a bank account on mobiles. I often thought it wasn't worth investing in that, but we did invest in it actually. Like I think we like 30% increased the signups for mobile, which was like a huge overall hit improvement. And just by like really investing in like improving that mobile experience. So no, I mean, maybe it's a small thing, but I was proven wrong there.
The opposite, a product decision where you were right and the team was wrong.
I mean, probably Mercury Personal. Not everyone disagreed with me, but it was I think if we'd done a vote, maybe it would have been 80-20 against.
One thing AI founders are overestimating right now.
I think this one is probably a little controversial, but I think a lot of AI founders measure their TAM in terms of labor. I think the reality is when there's like 10 startups in a space where they're like replacing labor with like software, like the TAM is not labor. The TAM is like what the software kind of costs. What is that software going to be able to charge, and like what are your moats there? So I think like the TAM calculations around like these labor replacement AI things are like way off. And that like completely fundamentally changes how you go value those startups.
What's something about building companies that most people in Silicon Valley disagree with you on?
It's hard to tell, but everyone disagrees with me on. I think I guess we talked about like remote first and like 996. Those are probably like two things that people disagree with me on.
Okay. And so final question. I mean, you've had a phenomenal journey. If you were to sit with the 25-year-old Immad, who's just wrapping up ClickPass, I think, at the time and about to start with his app, what would you say to him?
So I think the biggest thing I regret about like this kind of, I guess, like before I started Mercury is that all the things I did before Mercury, I didn't really care about the problem I was solving. Like it was much more of like a spreadsheet exercise to say like, oh, what are problems that like with my previous company, it was like a lot about serving game developers. But I wasn't a game developer. I didn't really care that much about the space. I was just like, I like playing games. So I really think the passion I've got from like helping entrepreneurs at Mercury, like it's a set of people that I love serving. They're like my people, and like it's just been so much more fun to build that. I wish I'd had that in my previous startup. So like that's a 25-year-old, I'd just say like build something that like you would really love for it to exist, rather than like being too like spreadsheet, like that kind of focus. But maybe it's always hard to like go back and say I would say this because like everything turned out great. So
yeah.
I don't know if I'd want to. Maybe
you don't want to disturb the dynamic. In this universe, it worked out.
Yes,
great.
Exactly. I don't know. I don't want to play another universe out.
Yeah. Immad, this was great. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.